everyone. Welcome to another episode of the WIT podcast. This is really special because it's probably a long time coming to actually take this. Maybe it's like a bit of a fangirl thing. I've been a big fan of the two people that we have on the podcast today. And it's been a little behind the scenes through like DMs and a few things posted on the gram. But it's really fun for me because when I was thinking about who to bring on for our back to school special edition podcast extravaganza, that's not the name, but that's what I'm saying right now. I thought a lot about bringing these two on because I do follow them on social media. And I have seen the growth of their organization, and I have seen their heart out into the world about how much they care about the demographic that they serve. And I thought, you know what, if I want my kids and I want my teens to hear from someone to motivate them as I get ready for back to school, I thought of these two. So how do you two introduce yourself? Well, it's going to be obvious on the YouTube, but when you're listening, I'm going to let you two make your intros and how you do that. Because I'm sure you've been introduced on podcasts before and they have to decipher your voices.
We like to say we're the dynamic duo behind Girls Mentorship. And thankfully, Jill is a little hoarse right now.
I do. Normally my voice does not sound like this, but I was not missing this podcast, baby.
So, okay. My name is Mary. This is my best friend and business partner, Jill. We own a company called Girls Mentorship. We teach life and personal development skills to teen and tween girls, as well as those who love them through social emotional learning. We do things like self-confidence, self-awareness, self-esteem. We really derive those characteristics out of girls so they can figure out who they are, what they stand for, as well as the importance of being the leader of their life while going into social situations, which a lot of the time obviously is school.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's just, there's so much that our listener or viewer can learn about you by following you on Instagram, and they can Google you and get your bios and all that kind of stuff. So our podcasts aren't like a resume, like dump. It's more of like, let's get into the conversation so they can learn about, your heart and why you do your version of doing WIT and why you wake up every day with this focus and for fun, just because it's this episode and our focus right now on back to school tips you would have for people back to school. So we'll jump into that at the end. But when you think about who you were because I know you work with more tweens than teens. So when you think about when you were 12 years old, are you doing today what you thought you would be doing when you were 12 years old?
Absolutely not.
No.
Okay.
I will say though, when I was 12, I remember loving people, and that has never changed. I've always been really outgoing. I've always loved going into a room, whether it was adults or kids or my friends, and just being with them and making people feel special. And so those qualities were innately in me at 12 years old, but never in my wildest dreams did I think I would be owning my own business, leading this type of work. I truly thought I was going to be a teacher. That was my dream when I was 12. I wanted to be a teacher, and I'm teaching now in just a different type of way.
I was going to say both of our moms were teachers, which is where that comes from. And I had the opposite experience. And I gather that it's because I actually was in the same school that my mom taught in. Mm-hmm. So I didn't ever want to cross paths with her. Like I didn't want her to rain on my parade. Like there was so much self-consciousness around being in the same area as my mom, and then also helping her set up her classroom during the summer or helping her grade papers after school, that I didn't want anything to do with that. I thought I love sports. I wanted to be a sports journalist. So it is funny how things come full circle, because obviously the teacher is alive in both of us. And that is essentially what we're doing. We're just doing it in a totally different way. It's almost a different level of teaching in terms of the entrepreneurship qualities in it.
Mm-hmm. And so if you could sit with your 12-year-old self and say anything to her today, what would you say to her?
Girlfriend, stop being so hard. Like let down your walls. Your fists are clenched so tight in terms of how you want to show up, how cool you want people to think you are, and you literally know nothing, and knowing nothing is okay. That you're in the perfect place to be a sponge and absorb and ask questions and not pretend like you know it all. And that will serve you better than how you're showing up right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say to be yourself. I tried to fit in to be liked. And I was really good at that. And what I lost was figuring out who I was. So it took me so much longer in my life to really say, this is who I am. And it's a good quality. And it also can be a bad quality of being a people pleaser. So I would say, you know what? You don't have to do or be anything for anybody else. Just be yourself and trust by you taking the next step that another opportunity will continue to open for yourself.
Okay. So because I hang out with teens a lot, it's almost like when I run these podcasts, I can hear their questions in my head
Cool.
because
Shoot them at us.
because of how much time I spend with them. They're going to say, be myself. I mean, be yourself. Like what is that? That feels heavy. That feels like a lot. What if you don't know who you are? So that language is used a lot by adults. So just be yourself, just be yourself. You are enough. You are enough. And then a lot of times a young person, and this is actually not reserved for young people. It's a lot of times anybody who's going through any stage of their life that brings about some level of self-doubt or not fitting in. And that can happen in every decade of your life. When someone tells you just to be yourself, what I've heard over the years is some people saying, well, I don't really like who I am, or I don't know what that means. I don't know. I can't silence what everybody else wants from me versus what's my voice. And if that's challenging for 40-year-olds, I would feel like at sometimes that would be considered challenging for a 12-year-old or a 14-year-old. So what would you say to the person who right now heard you say that and thought, that's a lovely sentiment? What did you mean by that?
For me, I never knew how to be honest. So I would lie for the littlest things. And not because I was getting into trouble, but because I wanted to be liked. I wanted to fit in. And so I would make these little lies that then I would have to keep up with. And it became exhausting to remember what I said, when I said it, who I said it to. So the lying became this armor that I was wearing. And the second that I really started to be honest with being able to say no, no, I don't want to hang out with you. Because I would say yes, I would really ignore how I felt because I wanted to be liked. So I was lying to myself a lot of the times, but I was also lying to just fit in. So when I think of being yourself, it truly, for me, it comes down to learning how to be okay, being honest with how you feel, and then saying yes or no without attaching someone else's liking to that response. So for me, when I started really being honest with myself, that's when a whole new world opened up for me. And my birthday was just yesterday. So I just turned 37 and I still am figuring this out. Every single day I'm triggered. I'm battling with, what does Jill want? How do I actually be honest with myself? And then if it's a bigger kind of no, how I dance with that a lot. Okay, well, why am I making this such a big deal when if I just tell the person no, I gotta let go of their response because it has nothing to do with me. I used to make so much meaning out of that.
And I think what you said about feeling, we don't often listen to how we feel. So if we want friends are a big thing, obviously, for teen and tween girls right now, that the subject matter comes up a lot, and it's just this desperation to want to be accepted. That's human nature. We don't listen to how somebody makes us feel. Instead, we'd rather be tied to who the person is because it is a friend, rather than listening to our gut feeling or the way our body feels with them. So when you're with somebody who doesn't make you feel good about yourself, right? There's a tightness about you.
Mhm.
There might be a funny feeling in your stomach around, you're questioning, is that actually how I want to show up? Do I actually want to do that? But your thoughts about being attached to that person in terms of having a friend or the popularity that comes with it outweighs the way you actually feel, until you might get home and you're by yourself and you do turn down that noise to where you're then kind of doing the pros and cons. But oftentimes the thoughts, which are the cons, weigh out the pros of maybe not saying, hey, I actually don't want to be friends with you, because you're worried then what that does to your self-image, to others, and how you're making somebody else feel. So for me, it was always everyone else's importance above mine. So that person, their feelings, I don't want to hurt them, so I'll suffer, and I'm not going to listen to the way my body is telling me to be. I mean, I literally went off campus every day for lunch with seniors when I was a freshman, and we went off and we did things that we were not supposed to do off campus during lunch. And I knew those things weren't right, but I desperately wanted the attention of these older seniors, boys and girls, rather than following my moral compass and saying, this is wrong. I'm going to stick with what I know is right, regardless of my perceived popularity or letting someone else down. So we often, I feel like what we see is we don't actually listen to our body at all. So if we were to quiet what was going on outside of us, which is hard nowadays, given the amount of technology that we're plugged into, if we were to quiet how we actually, the noise, and listen to how we were actually feeling, I think we'd get a much clearer response and get to work on the person that we quote unquote don't actually like.
I feel like you were going to chime in. Did you want to say something?
No, I
Oh,
just,
okay.
it's interesting that ours are very parallel. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was it. It was like, I totally relate to what Mary just shared around ignoring how I felt, because I just wanted to I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be liked. And then I would go home and like beat myself up over it. But I continued to do that every single day. And at some point, it was like, I have zero skills. I don't know how to navigate it. And I'm too embarrassed to speak up and ask for help because I don't want to look weak. And it came to a point where I just felt like, okay, enough is enough.
I mean, I think because I do have the privilege of working with like a wide range of people, or because I've been doing this work now for 13 years. So we have graduates from the WIT program that are in their 20s that I still meet up with and talk with. I think it's important because we have listeners that are 11 years old and we have listeners that are like 60 years old on this podcast, which is wonderful. And I think it's important for our younger listeners to understand that this doesn't go away. So I'll just speak from my experiences. It doesn't go away. You get better with navigating the feeling, as you journey through life and you're put into different social situations, and I'm currently living in 2 different cities and needing to make friends in a new city, and things are coming up for me that haven't come up for me for a long time because I've been in the same city for so long, where I'm going, how do you make friends? And then the thing that I know is different, and I would hope, and young people, you can use this now. You don't have to wait till you're older. Yes, I agree with the feelings piece. Yes, how do people make people make you feel? I also think fine-tuning your discernment is really something we don't talk enough about. And yet I'm really noticing it in my life right now, because now I'm this adult who is extroverted. So I don't have a hard time meeting people. But now I'm noticing that because I do enjoy being by myself, or I do enjoy the friends that I do have within the city that I usually live, and now I'm opening up to other people. Now I want to use more discernment on, do I want to spend my time doing that? A lot of people really want to go drink a lot and go to happy hours and go do that. And then it's like, do I want to go to that if that's the focus? Or maybe I want to go for a little. Do I want to leave? What are the values? Do we have shared values? And I think that learning discernment, I wish I would have learned the value of discernment younger. It's not really talked about a whole lot, but discernment's so important when it comes to where you want to spend your time and who you want to associate with. And in some ways, it's kind of less personal. I mean, we're all women on this podcast right now. And I can make the assumption that we would be categorized as recovering people pleasers, I think. But discernment really helps with that. It really does. If you focus on that, it becomes less like, oh, I don't like that person, or I don't like this person, or this, or that. I don't like that they drink so much, or that. What don't is this like? What's discernment is like? I'm just using discerning. Like, is this good for me? Is this not good for me? It's not about the other person. So I don't know if those listening, they're nodding their heads. So I'm going to ask them what they're in agreement with, or maybe what they may disagree with what I shared.
I love your call out on discernment, because honestly, this has nothing to do with how I run my business, but in my personal life, I am newly a Christian. So I don't feel like I've heard the word discernment disassociated from religion. And I think that might be, in my head, a reason why it's not talked about a ton, in terms of like, discernment's in the Bible all over the place. And I pray for wisdom and discernment every single day. Give me wisdom, give me discernment, because I want to be able to decipher what is good for me and what's bad for me, and not make it about the other person and what they're doing wrong or what they're doing right, because ultimately it leads back to me. It's my decision whether I want to go to that happy hour and have drinks, right? It's my decision if I want to go hang out with them. But what I have to weigh those ideas, those options against, is what you just said, my value system. And I don't think that's talked about enough either at a young age in terms of values. So for instance, we just worked with a soccer club, and these kids are in it. They're very hell-bent on making it to the next level and giving it all they have. So naturally, we walk in and see that soccer is a value to them, or the underlying why they're playing is a value to them. And we have to point out, like, you obviously have to prioritize your soccer and your practice and the skill training that goes into that if you want to make it to the next level. So what does that mean? Then you have to be able to say no to a friend who wants to go to a party, rather than, getting 8 hours of sleep before either a big game or a practice. And that's your value system. So every little decision that comes your way, you have to be able to filter through this decision-making tool that is your value system. And I think that's where discernment can play a really big role, because we can have FOMO all day long, right? Fear of missing out. That looks really fun on social media. I got invited. I want to go. It looks really cool. And I know all of us on this call can relate to the fact that we've done something like that and it actually wasn't very cool, and we would have rather done something else. So in order to decide what's important to you, you have to be willing to say no to things that look fun in order to not have FOMO, but instead turn that into JOMO, the joy of missing out instead. And I think all three of those things, the value system, being able to say no because of your discernment, create an equation for you to be able to really decide what is for you and what is not based on anything outside of you, but everything that you figured out about yourself internally.
And I was just going to say that was beautifully said. And what it makes me think, because I'm like, okay, if I were to put myself back into the shoes of the tweens and teens that are tuning into this, and the kiddos that we work with, for me as a teen, I wish I had programs and organizations like WIT and the ones that we started with Girls Mentorship, but I didn't have a space outside of my house, my church, my school, and my friends, and maybe a sport that I played. And that wasn't ever talked about. So when I said that I lacked the skills, I also wish I had the language. So parents, my parents did the best that they could with what they had. And now we have so much information at our fingertips that if I had the language to really figure out what was going on inside of my body and my brain, to, be able to discern effectively and figure out, oh, that's not a value, to then say no to something so I could really protect my peace, that would have been so beneficial as a young girl growing up, because I learn it now, and it's so important that Mary and I reach our hand back to teach girls and boys the language, so that if their parents aren't teaching it for them or to them that that they're empowered to say what they need and what they want using their
Mhm.
voice.
Yeah, I mean, so much of my conversation around values and moral compass and all that came from the home. It doesn't mean that I followed it. I mean, I got into plenty of
Totally.
trouble. Got into plenty of trouble. I did go to church regularly, which I do think is helpful. I think that there's some foundational principles in the faith that I grew up in that really work for me still to this day. And in my person, that's I've talked about it on the pod before. So but my relationship with God is like the most important relationship to me, and as a result, it has benefited every other relationship in my life. That said, that's not going to be everyone's jam, but I will say that understanding something bigger than myself has always been important to me. Because I do notice, and I'm curious if you are feeling this trend or have noticed this. There's a lot of focus on self. I think we're swinging a little bit. There was like no focus on self and martyrdom, 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 and like sacrificial, like I'm doing all this hard work and I'm doing all this. And all of a sudden everyone's like self-care, self-care, self-care. And then focus on yourself. How do you feel? How do you feel? How do you feel? And then for me, I've been on both sides of that. I've swung to those, and I'm finding my place where it works for me, because I don't actually like to be so self-focused. I like the power of tuning into what's right for me and my needs and all of that. But I don't really want to sit around and be like, what does Sarah need? What does Sarah want? It's like, that gets a little too not how I want to live in the world. And so I'm finding, and I think that that's what I would love for your thoughts on that. And what I'm working on, especially with like my girls in like their 20s. Girl power is fine, but like, okay, like what does that even mean anymore? I resist the girl boss language. That's not language that resonates for me for different reasons. It does resonate for other people. Uh, I'm throwing out a lot at you right now, but this is just something that we're really, it might make me open up something for like the 20 something girls. Right now, I'm just working with some girls privately, but there is this conversation of, what did you all mean with this girl boss thing? It's not really serving me. Like, I don't know what this means. And I don't like it. And this is how I'm feeling. And I 100% agree with them. So I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I mean, there's funny jokes around it now that make me laugh. Like we girl boss too hard. Like we threw it out there and now it's like it's exploded in our face.
Now we're
And
tired.
I agree. It's something that I think was meant for good to like empower women. Like, yeah, girls can be bosses too. But then there's the opposite side of the spectrum. We don't call guys boy bosses, right? And I
Right.
think that's where it just missed its target in terms of wanting to empower us. With where you were going with self-care and how much the pendulum has swung up, we had a really awesome conversation with Dr. Michelle Borba. She wrote a book called Thrivers, which our noses are in pretty constantly in this chapter of Girls Mentorship. And I just want to read a stat because I think it really serves to the point that you just made. There was a researcher, there still is. Her name is Sarah Conrad. She's out of the University of Michigan. She looked over 70 different studies of thousands of incoming freshmen, including every zip code. It didn't matter, Northeast, Southwest. And they gave them a personality test over the last 30 years. And what her and her team found started in the year 2000. And it was that empathy was taking a nosedive and that self-absorption was going up. And since then, since the year 2000, those statistics have only quadrupled. So we're in a point where stress is building, loneliness and disconnection have increased. Yes, some due to the pandemic, obviously. And we keep dialing down on the empathy. And what we get is straight survival mode for our kids, which I feel like we're definitely in terms of the loneliness factor and the not being able to relate to other people their age. Screen time has gone up. It's impacted our ability to actually see ourselves in others and relate to others from a place of I feel that too. You're not alone in that. I'm experiencing that. I'm going through that. And I feel like that is just, the pendulum is so up here with self. And that we're on sounds doom and gloom, but it feels like we're on a path of destruction with that, because with self-absorption being so high, creativity goes down, curiosity goes down, self-control goes down, and so does resilience, and then their ability to actually thrive in the environment that they're in. And it's like, dang. So we've encouraged self, we've encouraged it, we've encouraged it, we've encouraged it. And it feels like we've almost encouraged it a little too much. And it's kind of starting to bite us right in the backside.
Because what we're noticing is, I don't want to say this like a blanket statement for everybody, but we're raising narcissistic kids, which that's not what we're trying to do here. And if we're not careful about it, that's what's happening. And so these kids are so self-absorbed, they have no idea how to look outside of them. And that's what I think that's the friction that we're feeling having this conversation.
I mean, I'm grateful that the work that we do at WIT, I don't engage with people that are so like that, young people that are like that. I think, and we have such this focus on empathy at WIT with this idea of, I mean, it's kind of funny. And this is like for parents, if they're a first time listener or whoever's a first time listener and doesn't really know about what we do outside of this podcast, but at WIT, we have these entrepreneurship programs for young people. They can earn college credit. They can get on TV. They can get in the news, because I know that's what people want. And they want that for their college resume. And I'm understanding the language of like, I do want to feel special, and that's fine. But we only put you on the news. We only put you in Forbes. We only do those things if you're someone who has done something that has made the world a better place.
Absolutely.
And so there's like, it's this wonderful thing when you realize like, okay, I get it. I get what you want, and WIT can give that to you, but it's not going to feel as good. I just know it's almost like I'm a mama bear to these kids, where it's like, I just know it's going to feel better if you do good to get it,
100%.
because then that's just going to be, the Forbes article is just going to be the icing on the cake or the cherry on top. But all the layers will have been the time that you got up early to go volunteer, the time that you stepped into the room to pitch your business and you got uncomfortable, but you still did it anyway. The person that you showed up to and you met on the Zoom hangout for WIT, and now they're supporting your business, or you got this great tip from them. It's just the journey that we're trying to get them back to, the journey that is all happening offline. That is so valuable. But I think when I get interviewed about this, and then people talk, bring up that narcissist, piece with the kids or something. I mean, I get a little salty. I mean, I just say, whose fault is that? I mean, you're raising them. Like, you're raising them. Like, I don't have kids yet. Like, I'm working with the kids. I don't have kids yet. Like, who's to blame for stressed out kids at school? All these things. I'm like, adults are. So I mean, it's wonderful that I'm my own boss, because a lot of things that I say could probably get me fired from a job, but I don't think we're serving young people well when we sit around and I think what we'll do is we'll bring value to this podcast. But if adults are just sitting around talking about kids in a negative way, or talking about society, doom and gloom, and we don't acknowledge that the adults created the systems, the rooms, the programs that created that. And then we're going to the kid like, but why are you so self-absorbed? And it's so confusing to me. What are your thoughts?
I agree. We agree 100%.
100%.
Helicopter parents, snowplow parents, right? We don't want to see our kids suffer any minor inconveniences. So we swoop in and we fix it, and we continue to fix it, and we continue to fix it, and we continue to fix it, because it makes us feel good as the parent and the adult to be the savior almost. But what we're doing is robbing our kids of valuable critical thinking skills and coping skills. And I think a lot of parents forget that they're not actually raising kids. They're raising adults, and those adults need to go on and be productive members of society, to come to the table with productive solutions to problems that we as a generation have created for them to now live in. And they're not thriving in these circumstances. They're trying to. They're basically doing the best they can with what they've been given over the course of their life. And I was at church the other day, and the pastor was talking. It was a specific like Gen Z topic. They were talking about the youth pastoral side of things, and it was like, stop talking about our kids in a negative way. They can hear you. Like, oh, I wouldn't want to be a teen these days. Oh, that, no way, I could never do that. And it's like, what are you doing? You're not giving them any courage or confidence that they can go step out into the world and do it themselves when you're saying things like that. So stop it. Be their biggest fan. Help them get to the next step. And our biggest, like, one of the coolest things that we picked up in a recent conversation was like, are you watching your footwork as a parent? Are you pulling your kid, or is your kid pulling you? And if you're the one that's pulling your kid, you need to stop and assess how you're doing things, because they need to be pulling you. They need to be the ones thriving in their areas and learning how to do these things so they can know how to do and be an expert in those areas when you're no longer in the picture.
Did you want to add something?
I know. I just think that this conversation, especially with the kiddos tuning into this, that like there are people like Sarah and Mary and I who look at young adults as capable. There are incredible kids in this world doing really good work, and it's totally clouded by nonsense like this. So I really want to just say that the people who are tuning into this is like, they're like, we see you, you're valued, you're worthy, and it takes work. It takes work. You cannot press a button for success and have it show up on your doorstep the next day. I know that's the world that we live in, and I know that it just is having conversations like this to say that it's about setting a big goal, but knowing that on the way to that goal, you're going to fail. And how do we fail forward versus it stopping you and you quitting on yourself? Those type of skills to overcome and develop that resilience muscle is only going to set you up for success, to reach more goals and to make a greater impact in this world. So I'm just here to be a cheerleader, to say we're empowering these young people, because dang, I have never seen a greater generation that can really transform how this world works if we look at them as capable and incredible individuals, people.
And I just, the young people, like, look outside yourself. Just remember to look outside yourself. We have something at WIT. It's the WIT 3. Do the WIT 3 every day. We can't guarantee you a great day, but we can pretty much guarantee you a good day. And if you do these 3 things, if you do something for yourself, because taking care of yourself is important, if you do something for somebody else, and if you do something for your dream or your business, if you do those 3 things every day, I mean, my alarm goes off on my phone every day at a certain time, and it says, have you done your 3? And it's just this reminder, because sometimes I can just be really focused on myself and working on my business, my, me. And then I go, oh, I haven't done something for somebody else. And the gesture for somebody else can simply be sending a text message that says that you're thinking of them, or giving them a compliment, or offering to share your platform with somebody, inviting them on your podcast. That can be an act of service for somebody. Even reaching out to a parent and saying, how can I be of service today? I've got 15 minutes. Is there any way that I can help out today? And doing something for your dreams or your business, specifically if you're in WIT, it's so important to be somebody, in my opinion, who, if you're going to talk about it, then be about it. Look at your day and go, I keep saying, I'm going to go back to the Forbes thing, because that's the thing that I get hit up for the most about writing about in Forbes. Like, if you want to be in the spotlight, then what are you doing today that would be like, we should put you in the spotlight? You've earned this spotlight. Nobody deserves a spotlight. What have you done, like, to earn that? And don't just want the fancy things. Like, be willing to put in the work through the journey. And I kind of want to use this as the way to take a shift in our conversation, being respectful of time, that you are both entrepreneurs. And so also listening to the people that are listening to this podcast are entrepreneurs. Most of them are teen or tween entrepreneurs, some adult entrepreneurs. And you've launched your own business. They're running their own business. People say they want to be successful. What does it really take to be successful? Oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. It sounds so glamorous. So let's switch gears a little bit to talk about your business, because you can speak to that as 2 entrepreneurs. What do you wish somebody would have told you, or what piece of advice would you give somebody who's about to get started on their entrepreneurial journey?
I mean, you better be 1,000% committed, because there are going to be days where you absolutely want to give up because it is hard. It is hard. It is hard. It is hard. And I know that social media has a great way of showcasing all the fun stuff and standing in front of a private plane and cashing the checks, but they don't see the half of it. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and say I cry every day, but there are days where I am confronted, and it's more days than I might like to admit in terms of my own shortcomings. So my time management, how I prioritize things, the way I get things done, and that's hard because it's like I'm responsible for me. And because I'm responsible for me and I'm running my own business, that means I really have to face these things if I want to be successful, or if I think that my business is going to succeed, because I can't have poor time management skills and scale a business. Those two things are not synonymous with one another. Whereas when I was an employee, I could have poor time management skills because it wasn't my dime, it wasn't my clock. And I'm not sitting here saying that I took advantage of somebody else's business, but I wasn't confronted with it as much as I am knowing that I'm the one who makes the needle move. If I don't get up in the morning at a certain time and get this task accomplished, then this falls behind, and then I'm behind here, and then I'm stressed out, and then my to-do list is a million miles long, which puts a lot of pressure on me. I didn't have to think of those things when I was punching in and punching out for someone else. So there's just a lot of things that come at you that are personal to you, that if you don't have the wherewithal to want to deal with, then entrepreneurship is probably not for you. And we're 3 years in, so our 3-year anniversary is in 3 days. We literally launched this August 12th of 2020. And there are days where I'm still like, man, is this worth it? Like, wow, I think I'm a really great person 75% of the time, but 25% of the time I'm like, how do you do life? How did you make it this far? And those questions can be really difficult to want to answer.
And I echo the sentiment that Mary just shared, but really the first thing that came to my mind when you asked that question, Sarah, was the fortune is in the follow-up. So why we are successful in our business is because we don't allow one person to dictate how we move forward in a conversation, or if they don't respond to us, we're gonna continue to follow up and be professional, but also know that we're the driver. I think a lot of times entrepreneurs get this great idea, they send an email, and if they don't get a response, it's like, well, that opportunity and that door has shut. What I have actually learned from Mary, because again, that was Jill's mindset 3 years ago, was, well, they didn't reach out to us. She's like, no, if we want it bad enough, we're going to find a way to make it happen. So we've kind of coined the term, the fortunes and the follow-up, because truly that's been our greatest ninja secret sauce in building relationships, getting opportunities to be presented to us or for us. And I think for young entrepreneurs, don't let one no stop you. Continue to follow up and build rapport with people, because eventually it will happen for you. So continue to follow up with whatever it is you put out there.
That's a wonderful takeaway for anyone listening, no matter what the age, especially if you're an entrepreneur or you are wanting something, you're wanting an experience, you're wanting a connection with somebody. And then you say, well, she hasn't written me back, or he hasn't written me back. And I would say that I love the phrase fortunes in the follow-up. And I would put an asterisk on it in my version and say, and make sure you make it clear what's in it for that person too, when you follow up, because
100%.
it's very clear. A lot of people make it really clear what they want in their reach out to people, and what I want this from you. I want this from you. I want this for you. But ask yourself this, and this literally just happened before we got on here, and I had to silence my phone. I was texting with a former WIT teen. She's a graduate. She's in her 20s now, and she's in a job hunt right now. And she ran this email, but she sent me this email on text and said, like, does this look good? And she's following up with somebody. And I said, she's doing it really well. She's following up with somebody who offered to help her with this job search, who happens to be a friend of mine. But in this follow-up email that she did, I said to this girl, I said, it's still like, it's obvious that you want something from her, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But what can you add to that email that shows that you listened to her last time she had gave you advice on this job search? What can you add to that email that says, dear Susan, I just want to give you an update on the job search. Since our conversation, I've done this, this, and this. Let the person know that you actually let Susan know that you actually listen to them. And also tomorrow I have these interviews and it looks like you're connected to them on LinkedIn. And if you have any tips, I'd be welcome to it. So you're asking that person for something for sure. Like basically you're saying, put in a good word for me, or like, what tips do you have about these people that I could be, having an interview with. But before you've gone into the ask, you've at least acknowledged that this person, like you've listened to this person before, and you're not just always going back for something, because that is, if you can learn that, I don't even want to say it's a trick or a strategy. It's just a good way to live.
I was going to say it's a skill.
It's the rule of reciprocity.
Yeah,
so we present it to that way to our teens a lot, because we want more of an allowance, or we want more screen time, or we want more of a curfew. We want. And I'm like, but what are you giving? So if your mom's love language is quality time, are you giving your mom quality time? Are you doing that? That is very easy for you to do. Or instead, are you getting home from school, going to your room and slamming your door and staying there until dinner time, coming out, eating, and then going back?
Or eating and asking for something at the table.
Exactly.
Oh, exactly.
Could you sit down at the kitchen table while mom is making dinner and just sit with her? You don't even have to talk to her. I bet that she would like it if you were in the room and not in your own room, and there was a body next to her that she could look over and smile at. Period. Like, you give to get, right? So I love that you pointed that out in terms of, hey, I listened to your advice. Thank you. That's a big thank you for giving me what you already gave me. Here's how I took it, ran with it. And if there's anything else that you can do in this regard, I would appreciate it. And if not, that's okay. We'll touch base later. But giving to get, it's this rule of reciprocity that is so big in the languaging that we use with our kids.
So if any of you are listening and you're thinking there's a follow-up that you haven't done because maybe you felt rejected, that's super normal. I've been there, and that doesn't go away. Even about how successful you can get, you still have these moments of like somebody you think that is bigger and more important than you has not responded to you. And then you take it personally. That's fine. That's normal. After you listen to this podcast, go follow up with them, because that's a brave thing to do. A brave maybe is maybe it's just a good thing to do. I don't know how brave it is, but it's a courageous thing. I'll say it's courageous, especially when you're feeling insecure about it. And in the follow-up, figure out a give or figure out the win for them. If you are asking for something, are you willing to say, hey, if you mention me in this thing, or I'd love to be a guest on your podcast, here's how I'll share it. Here's how we'll do it. Let them know what you're going to do in return. That's just such a good skill. And I can tell you, as somebody who gets a lot of messages, not a lot of people have it. So you will stand out. And that's just a fun little tip for you. Okay. I knew this was going to happen because I was like, oh God, this thing could probably be like a 3-part series. Which maybe I should have just planned out in advance that it was going to be a 3-part series. But as we get close to wrapping up this podcast, and it is the back to school extravaganza, and teens and tweens will be packing their backpacks, and some already have, and they're off to school by the time I listen to it. Some are getting ready. And if you could put 3 things in a backpack, this like symbolic, metaphorical backpack as you start your school year, what would you pack for school?
I would pack my grit. And grit, the way that we define grit, is growth mindset, resilience, integrity, and tenacity. So that bottled up in your backpack. I would pack love. So love for yourself and love that is in your household, because those are the people that will champion you as you head into this school year. And then I would pack something that represents your dreams. So whether it's a penny, an acorn, something that you can say, you know what, I'm packing my grit, my tenacity, my growth mindset. I'm packing love for me and others, and to really go after my goals and my dreams this year. I mean, I want that backpack, and it's got to be in like some really cool disco glitter
Color.
color. Yeah.
Okay. What do you have in your backpack?
Grit for sure. I mean, the ability to, I want to touch back up on like the friend thing. And I mean, I believe it was Drake who said no new friends, right? Like, I don't want that mindset. I want to go into my new school year being open, which is that growth mindset, the resilience, the integrity. So the integrity with who I am, my values, how I want to show up, and my tenacity. So if it's not making the basketball team or not making varsity, whatever that looks like I want to be able to bounce back. I want to come from a place of nothing. So if I interacted with someone last year and they were made me feel sour in some sort of a way, I want to give them a fresh slate, just like I would want them to give me a fresh slate, because so much happens within this particular period of time. The statistic is that 1% of friends remain friends from 7th to 12th grade. So in that, there's just so much shuffling that can happen and growth that can happen over summertime to hold on to the way someone made me feel a year ago. So I want that open-mindedness to come from a place of nothing. And I love what Jill said about love. I would rather make a move towards loving people than hating people. And it's very easy to do the latter, right? If somebody bumps into you in the hallway and it's not intentional, you automatically get angry. And that's not just you, that's human nature. But how do you revert to giving somebody the benefit of the doubt as opposed to reacting right away and making that mean something about you and making it mean something about them? And then there's this whole story that you tell and it sticks with you for the rest of your life. Like, can we just wipe that clean too? So grit, just coming from a place of nothing and working on my response versus my reaction.
I love it. So, listener, which ones resonate with you? Are you packing them all? I mean, really think about, because you have so much power and control, especially if you're one of my young listeners who feels like most of their day is dictated by adults. That is a choice to see the world that way. I would encourage you to realize how many choices you get to make every single day. You get to make the choice of your attitude. You get to make the choice of what you wear. A lot of times, even if it's a uniform, because I used to wear uniforms, you can put your own little twist on it.
Yes.
You get to choose what you like on Instagram, what you share on social media, who you follow. You get to decide how you fuel your body. You get to decide if you live hydrated or not hydrated. There's so many choices that you get to make every day to remind yourself how much power that you have. And remember, it can feel like the world is all about you, which that's totally normal to feel that way, especially as a teenager. But there's so many people in your world that care about you and would love, and just like this is something that I'm just really getting from our guests today, would love for you to turn towards them a little bit and check in with them. Be of service to other people in your family. Your family is there for you, and they're probably sometimes annoyed by you, just like I'm often annoyed by the teens that I work with, and I can still love them. Think about how you can be of service to your family during this time of transition of going back to school, and show yourself some grace. Grace is what I have in my backpack going back to school. Grace for yourself, grace for others. And I'm just would love for everyone listening to go give a listen to our guest podcast. Are you guys, I feel like, how often are you releasing episodes over there of your podcast?
We've got a cadence. It's once a week. We've finally kind of hit a stride. We feel really good about going into, we've got 100 episodes under our belt at this point, and it feels like we just started. Like now we're finally starting after we've recorded 100 and figured out our interview style and how we like to talk. It feels like, boom, we're ready now.
So tell them real quick where they can find you.
You can find us on online at our website. It's just girlsmentorship.com. And same on Instagram. We're super active over there. We love connecting with new friends in our community. And it's also at Girls Mentorship. So no weird spelling, spelled the normal way. And we would love, love, love to have new friends and to continue this conversation over in our neck of the woods too.
And our podcast is called What's the Lesson? So WTL, we like to say that we're taking our WTF moments and turning them into WTL moments, because everything is a lesson. If you want to look at it that way, if you want to see the world that way, it's no longer what's happening to me. It's how did this happen for me? And that might take some time. Granted, you have give yourself the grace, like Sarah said, to take time to see things that way. But every quote unquote bad thing that's ever happened in my life has served me in one way or another by looking at it through that framework. So that's the behind the scenes name of our name.
Well, go check them out, everybody. And we love when you share the episodes and your takeaways. We also love to do some fun giveaways. If you turn this episode into some type of reel or TikTok or whatever, tag us in all of it. We'll share it. We'll get you, we'd love to support you. And if you have questions for our guests today, of course, you can send them to us, send it to them. But you've got 3 adults right here that care about you, especially if you're a young person, we extra care about you. You're not alone. It does get better. And if today has not been a great day so far, it is not over yet. There are still ways that you can turn this day around. You're just a choice away from a different mood and a different experience. I would recommend going doing something for somebody else that kind of helps you turn the day around. And until next time, just keep doing WIT.